What's up? I'm back. I'm going to talk about the movie Lucy. It was a pretty good movie. Um, if I know if you're a type of person who want to be entertained, it was above average. If you're a type of person who wants something thought provoking, it was good. So good is higher than above average. Now I just wanted to decode a little bit of it, just to help people out. So this has spoilers. If you didn't see it, I would probably stop this video right now. The movie itself was centered around a character, Lucy, played by Scarlett Johansson, and she has a boyfriend, and he eventually tricked her into running some drugs for him. He was probably running drugs the whole time. She didn't really know that, and he tricked her into running drugs for him. Of course, and he ends up dying, and she gets captured, and they force her to run drugs for them. So this is kind of symbolic of how the drug trade is right now, where they could surgically put drugs in you. Pretty good way to be able to smuggle drugs into many countries. That's realistic. So they put the drugs in her, but in jail, well, she gets caught, of course, and in jail she gets beat up, and they beat her up, and the drug starts to leak in her bloodstream. So when the drug leaks in her bloodstream, it changes her. And when it changes her, she can now use more of her brain. Now, this is going to get into a controversial subject because for most people in science, they've said that the brain, we use more than 5 to 10% of the brain. So, some people will hit this movie and say, well, it's not even scientifically accurate. I would say this. I would say we definitely use more than 10% of our brain. But if you look at it in terms of how much our brain we have conscious control over, it's going to be more than 10%, but it's not going to be as much as it's supposed to be honest. And that's the most important thing when we talk about 10%. We talk about 10%. Well, it should be said at 10% of the person's potential. Because even our conscious brain, we say we have a lot of control over our conscious brain, but look, you get emotionally, you get emotional, right? Or you get in an argument, or you get angry, you get sad. Can you switch back your thoughts? No. You're sad, you stay sad for months. I mean, maybe not for months, but for weeks sometimes. You get angry, you stay angry for hours. So you can sell even in terms of our conscious functions. Look, concentration. How many people can really concentrate? How many people can concentrate about the same thing for a minute straight without another thought coming to their mind? If it's no to all those things, then even the part of your brain that controls your conscious, your logic, your conscious mind, your conscious movement, even that's sketchy. So 10% of the brain may be inaccurate, but definitely 10% of the potential. So I just wanted to clear it up because I know a whole bunch of people would, write me and talk about, that's not scientifically accurate. So as she starts to learn to use more, she starts to use more of her brain capacity, she gets a whole bunch of powers. And at this point, this is why I think the movie was still good because I think it hits on something that a lot of people don't want to pay attention to. The brain is a powerful instrument. If the person really understood how to use their brain and how to use their brain to basically recreate the whole environment, there's not too many things the opposing forces can really do with you unless they're on the same thing. Meaning, unless he finds someone who's like another Lucy. So for a lot of people who would say, the movie was kind of sketchy, I think the movie was written the way it was supposed to. You really couldn't really have a truly equal villain against her unless the person was on the same stuff, which I'm sure they probably would be in Lucy too, which I would assume they would do. So I think in that way the movie is still good because I think it hits on something, and that's the reason why a lot of people don't really write about those type of subjects. I mean, if you look at the superhero movies that are popular right now, Lucy could in theory beat all of them. In the movie, she displayed the ability to go back and forth through time, to be able to have like a form of aggressive telepathy where she could either see what's in your mind or she could shut your mind off. There's not really that many things you can. If she could teleport, she went into space. Like, there's not really that much things you can do against something like that. So I think when you're making a movie like this, it's very hard to, because even the Matrix, if you notice, Neo had powers, but when he went outside the Matrix to the real world again, when he plugged into the Matrix, he had the power. In the real world, he didn't have as much power as the Matrix. So even the Matrix was based on more limitation. So I think from that premise, they did a good job. I think the person who wrote the movie definitely knew what they were doing. And sometimes when you see a movie, when you're dealing with the occult, it's only a cult. It only covers the occult because either the person might be an occultist and they want to do certain things to solidify their success, which is 60% of the movies, or the other 40%, the person gets it by mistake, when I say by mistake, they don't really get it by mistake, but they tap into the imagination. And when you tap into the imagination, so much of the occult is run off that. So it's almost like the two things were intertwined with each other. But it doesn't necessarily mean the person was really dropping real occult information. And that's why sometimes when you got people who think that when you decode movies is equal to reading occult books, that's where they fall short. So in the movie, there were a lot of things to decode. First off, the name Lucy. You know, in old traditions, they perceived God as being feminine. And only God as being feminine. God is being, and it's controversial for some people who care, Lucifer. Now, if you don't want to use that word, you could say Sophia, if that makes you feel better. Basically, who created the whole world, or the universe. Even when they say Yehud Vehed in Hebrew, which Yahweh came from, it's still feminine. Has two H's, and the feminine principle is actually more dominant in that form, in that Kabbalistic formula than the male principle. So, when he says Lucy in the scene, and then he goes into the first monkey was named Lucy, or the first ape was named Lucy, who humans descend from, which is true. It's kind of a subtle link back to the creator goddess. And you know how you know this is true? Lucy came out the same time as Hercules in the movies, and Lucy made 46 million, Hercules made 30 million. That's also symbolic of the fact that for humanity rise, all humans, whether men or women, have to get back in touch with the divine feminine within them. That's the part that has the intuition. That's the part that has the memories. That's the part that really connects to nature. The male part is the one that keeps it balanced. It's a big difference. So where it's no. I mean, of course, I don't think the director thought that he was going to be Hercules, and I don't really think the director thought that, you know, they would. I mean, there was no way to really plan that. But sometimes energy speaks for itself. So when Hercules did 30 million, Hercules is symbolic of that male character, and Lucy did 46 million, shows you, in a sense, the energy, nature is showing you the momentum that's beginning to be built. So from that angle, naming the movie Lucy, even Scarlett Johansson, the creator of the movie said that they created a movie 10 years ago. Sometimes when you deal with astrology, we do numerology. Timing is everything. In Thelema, or in some occult lineages, modern occult lineages, they associate the rise of the feminine power with something called a scarlet woman, which again is kind of like the same way of saying Isis, Lucifer, whatever you want to claim, Heteru, Hathor, Kali, you know, Aphrodite, whatever aspect of the feminine force you want to actually relate to. So, energetically, getting an actress named Scarlett kind of helps seal that, in a sense, if that makes any sense to you. And I think that's what the creator did. So it took a while for somebody with the same name to link up, but when you think of it, it links up perfectly. And in the movie, the reason why I say some pretty good occultism, because the movie was really centered around the cells, the blood. And that's the real difference between occultism and regular spirituality. In regular spirituality, that's more of a religion. They don't understand that spirituality is really about changing the blood chemistry and the brain chemistry, and eventually being able to change it at will. What the movie did is because this channel is all about Neptune. So what the movie did is take a Neptunian concept, where Neptune represents an energy that changes the blood chemistry. And the tarot cards is associated with the hangman, 12. Now, 12, real numbers stop at 9. Or so for some people 10, but really 9, but you could even say 10. So when you get 12, you either get 1 plus 2, and you get 3. 3 takes you back to the Empress in tarot, which is still feminine. So when you look at it from a certain aspect, you will see that it's definitely pushing heavy feminine energies, but what happens is the Empress is really beginning of Mother Nature. So in the movie, if you look in the first 10 minutes, he kept flashing to the animal kingdom over and over and over and over again. That wasn't done subtly. That was getting into the power of the cells. That's getting into the power of the fact that when you deal with Neptune, the blood is very important. Now, Neptune can also mean drug use, but negative Neptune. So the movie is more symbolic of it being done quickly, which is what you don't want to do. So she took the drug. A day later, she gets powers. In true occultism, that might take you 20, 30 years. But when you do it successfully after 20, 30 years, you might have abilities that's far supersedes regular human beings. But it takes time. That's why most people never do it, because most people don't have the patience for that, to be honest. You see most people flash videos of Asian masters doing it, but all those masters that they do shooting fire out their hands, all kind of stuff, they're always old men. Yet you got people 20 years old who want to get it done in 6 months or 2 years, even 10 years. It's not going to happen. And that way, it's Neptunian in the sense that it was getting to change the blood chemistry, but it was done by drugs, which you don't want to do with drugs. You want to do it the subtle way. Because when you do the subtle way, the effects are much more last longer. And not just that, it's more gentle in your body. The drug use has very negative side effects. Where even in the movie, she had to actually take more drugs to actually be able to balance her energies, balance the energy in her cells, so that the process can keep going on. But got that thing 50-60%, it would have killed her based on her neural activity. So from that though, when she had to take more of the drugs to actually finish it, it's kind of symbolic of alchemy. Don't forget, people, alchemy is chemistry. Chemistry is just an imperfect form of alchemy. So when she had to actually take more drugs, it wasn't going to just happen naturally. Even after she took it and she was evolving, she had to actually take more to seal the deal. It's the same way as the alchemist making elixirs for herself or himself to be able to help them spiritually. That's why when people talk about the world's illusion, it's very dangerous if they just hop on that, because you will have to make physical substances to basically help seal your ability to cross over into whether you're going to call it true occultism, whether you're going to call it unlocking your potential, whatever. You actually have to make physical substances for that. You actually have to understand the power of the cells. All those things are things that have to be done. And if you don't understand that, you will crash. You won't die like how she would in the movie, but your spirituality will crash. And that's when we look at most spiritual systems now, they have reached a point where they're not evolving anymore, because that's the reason why. That's where alchemy comes in. So I think that was a subtle plug in that. Even when it ended, it was kind of like in Paris, which is the city of Isis. Like, again, most people don't realize Paris was actually named for Isis, very subtly. In fact, they always used to say, Paris was actually constructed to be an Egyptian city. So all those things were subtle plugs. So when you're decoding movies, you have to understand that. You have to be able to understand it's always about being subtle. So the use of drugs, Neptune, changing the blood and brain chemistry. Remember, the movie harped on brain chemistry. That's what true occultism is. Your occultism is not focused on that. It doesn't teach you about the body. It doesn't teach you about not just astrology, how the astrological energies affect your body every day, as well as where in your body matches certain astrological energies. That's why there's a type of healing alternative medicine called astrological medicine, right? It's kind of started by Paracelsus, or people who follow his work. I want to say he started, but he followed his work. He actually did it, but he did it under Spiragyrics, which is basically, again, fusing alchemy with herbalism to kind of create it like a plant alchemy system that you would still use astrology to complete. Those things are important. So if you were using astrological medicine, it wouldn't just be, all right, today's Tuesday, I don't know, August 3rd, and what's my future going to be for the day. It had nothing to do with that. That's part of it, but astrological biology or astrological medicine went far beyond that. So, in a sense, understanding that principle is very important. That's why a lot of the movies based on the cells. The cell is extremely important. What most people don't really realize is within the human body, you have more switches. You have more switches for your genes than actual genes. So that's why they came up with the whole junk DNA stuff. It's like, think about having like 10 light bulbs, but you got 50 switches. And 10 switches turn on the 10 light bulbs, or 40 switches do nothing. The movie harped on passing information on to the next generation. That's extremely important. Kind of matches African shamanism, some African shamanistic traditions that spoke about 23 races that existed before human beings. So many humans get into who was the first race, who's the best race. What they don't get into is the fact that races come and go. Always has been, always will be. Human race is not going to be close to the last race that ever exists on Earth. The switches basically are for people who actually learn to transform or turn on their DNA. They add to themselves. They become something that's more than human. The extra switches are for that. So when you get into the cells, The movie focusing a lot on cells in the brain is extremely important. I think that's the difference between that and the New Age community, which will focus on the brain and power of thought and everything fluffy, but they don't really get into the fact of the power of the cell. Because when you get into the power of the cell, you gotta get into the 4 elements. You gotta get into the periodic table. You gotta get into stuff like hydrogen in your body, nitrogen in your body, sulfur in your body, magnesium in your body, calcium in your body. What does that mean? You have to get into stuff that's real life. For a lot of people in the New Age community, they're more out there, out in space. So I think the movie focusing on cells, and not just New Age community. To be honest, the Eastern community, a lot of Eastern spiritual communities at this point will be the same. Sometimes we need to tone down on the delusionary aspect of the physical reality and start to understand the physical reality a lot better. You master it, like a video game, then you could talk about its illusion. So I think the movie really harped on that, and I think in a lot of ways it did a better job at that than other superhero movies. Like I'm going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy either today or sometime this week. I plan on going to see that as a comic book fan. I don't plan on seeing that as a fan, as a person who wants to decode movies. I don't expect anything from that. Why? Because when you look at traditional comic book characters, it's not really done really by occult means naturally. They get some stuff right because they plug it into the imagination. But in terms of naturally, it will be more like how Lucy is. Instead, without the drugs, though. It might take 20, 30 years. That's why at the end of the movie, she took her whole body with her. That's like spirituality at the highest level. And I think her taking her body with her at the end of the movie is very important. In the East, where they don't care about the physical body, they actually have to shoot their spirit out through their crown. Which is good. You probably go to the 7th dimension. But you go to higher realms if you transform your whole body into that pure energy. Because matter is still energy. But to a purer, crisper energy that can go beyond the 7th realm. That's why she took her whole body with her. And then she said, I'm everywhere. She actually ended the movie by saying she's everywhere. And I know a lot of people wouldn't like it because they wouldn't like that part because they wanted to end better. But there's no real way to end a movie like that when you look at it with those eyes, to be honest. And I think they did a very good job with that. So definitely think you should check it out. It's a pretty good movie, to be honest. I think in some ways sometimes it's going to, it kind of touches on some of the stuff that's going to happen with this world eventually. Many people talk about indigo children, all this other stuff. And in real life, you're not going to be able to take a drug or do it. But you're going to have to do real spiritual work to unlock those gifts. And I think, in a sense, it's going to go beyond our traditional sci-fi. So while other sci-fi movies might be more what sci-fi fans like, myself included, when it comes to a movie touching real life, I think Lucy might hit it. So, may you have a Neptunian existence. Till next time. Peace.